In our community called the Writers League, we have a special feature called article teardowns. So the way that article teardowns work is you can submit an article and then I will personally review it, provide notes on things that it did well, as well as areas of improvement. And then I do a screen recording walking through those notes and really, kind of tearing down our students' articles so that they can get a lot better. Today I wanted to share an example of one of those teardowns just to give you a look into what it's like to be inside of the Writers League. Also, you can learn a lot from seeing the feedback I give other students. So if this sort of feedback component is interesting to you, let me know. Leave a comment in the comment section letting me know how you thought about it or what you felt about it. And so enjoy. All right, so the next article we have here is 5 signs a woman is emotionally immature and not ready for a relationship. Red flags you need to pay attention to. So let's start with some of the things that I like. So number one, personally, I've always been a big fan of using the word signs in your headlines because human beings are very kind of superstitious, omen-seeking individuals. And they're constantly looking for signs. And when you're talking about the target market, who, let's say it's a guy who's looking for the right type of woman for his life, well, yeah, this is kind of touching on both a pain point and a positive outcome, right? So the pain point, what he wants to avoid, he basically wants to avoid, kind of being with an immature, emotionally toxic woman. And then the thing he's seeking is to actually have a happy, healthy relationship with an emotionally stable woman. So hits a lot of different areas on multiple points with the headline. And then you go through and basically you're talking about a lot of things. You're talking about a lot of things that guys are frustrated with when they're dating. So it makes it relatable, right? So she's playing games with you. She's hot and cold. She's playing mind games. She's keeping you at arm's length. She wants your attention. She's playing hard to get, right? So these are things that a lot of men in dating have experienced, so they can relate to it. And then basically she goes here. She's all right. If you're a high value man, you don't fall for that. You don't want to be with a woman who doesn't have the most honest intentions. So basically, at the beginning, she's spelling out the problem or what's going on, and then she's like, "All right, this is what you should do if you're high value, and what you can do moving forward." Then she goes through and gives some more examples here, right? So I've highlighted some of these because these are things that are personal to me, right? It's I've had exes who would lose their temper and then just blame it on their emotions, right? So that's a nice little sentence there that's going to be relatable. Then she flips it and then talks about her perspective as a woman, how she might struggle with that from time to time, but how she's learned to exhibit emotional maturity herself. So this is a combination of actually not just a guide for men to look for women who are more emotionally stable. It's a guide for women who might need to work on their emotional maturity. So it's kind of hitting multiple audiences at once. So it's it's not about trying to change her. It's don't try to change her, but if it's not the kind of behavior you're looking for, then you should look elsewhere, right? So these are very these are practical pieces of advice. She's incapable of taking responsibility. She goes through, she talks about, for example, there's a woman who is unhealthy and overweight, might say things, I was bullied in elementary school, so that's why I'm 500 pounds, right? So, a little bit hyperbolic with, 500 pounds there, but it still drives the point home. And she just talks, she overeats every day, doesn't exercise and prioritize health, then tries to rationalize her bad decisions, right? So a lot of things, especially on Medium right now, there are some people, especially in the dating market, who have been, making some bold claims that will spike polarizing responses. So like for one, if you comment on things like people's eating habits or their diet, like there's a culture on Medium that is kind of anti that for some people, and that some people get upset with you, but then some people also agree with you. You know, there is a culture on Medium where if you speak on any gender and sort of like anything resembling like an absolute or a generalization, like people might come after you, but it's also something that resonates with people. So just in terms of topic selection, like basically, if you're telling men and women what to do and how to run their lives, in particular in relationship to dating, there is a high odds you will spike controversy. I've seen articles where men have written stories about women. Like one of my students, Moreno, he wrote about an article about women and like how they are unhappy because they are chasing a career instead of building a relationship and having a family, and he pissed a lot of women off. I've seen women writing articles about men, characterizing them as, toxic, and it's pissed a lot of men off. So like these going after hot button topics does work. And like for me, and what you should learn is like you have to learn how to separate your emotions and learn how to study articles. So like there's a lot of things like I personally disagree with when I'm reading articles, and maybe you might personally disagree with some things too, but you should still be able to like read through those arguments and understand them. And just in general, like for the dating niche, for the relationships niche, like there's a huge, and it's a cultural conversation that's going on all over the internet about like male female dynamics, whether male female dynamics even exist, whether we should follow like which norms and gender roles and ways of living are applicable and which are not. Like this is a huge point of debate, especially on Medium. So like if you want to dive into that fight, like I encourage you to. It's fun. I don't mind a little confrontation. So good job on all those fronts. All right, let's talk about some areas for improvement. Hooks. Like the definition of emotional maturity is your ability to understand and manage your emotions. Well, the problem with this sentence is like it doesn't spark any emotions. It's a lukewarm opener. Like when you want to open, if you want to open a blog post like with some intrigue, you want to think of a one-liner that stands out, right? So let's look at some examples I put here, just like some things I was thinking about. Like at least spark some curiosity. Like have you ever dated or attempted to date a woman like you just couldn't figure out? You ever get a sense that something was off about a woman you're interested in, but you just don't know what it is? Does it ever feel like women were programmed to drive you nuts? Right? So you think, let's compare the emotional contrast between the definition of emotional maturity is your ability to understand and manage your emotions versus, does it ever feel like women are programmed to drive you nuts? Like, aren't they loony? Right? So that's emotional resonance, right? So like for me, I like the problem agitate solve formula, and the way that works is like you spell out the problem, you agitate the problem by talking about how their life will get worse. Then you're like, all right, let's fix this, right? So like let's say I was starting this from scratch, and I'd be like, does it ever feel like women are literally programmed by God or the universe to drive you insane? You go through different relationships with women, they play games with you, you can't figure out what's going on, and it feels like you're moving further and further away from actually having a healthy relationship. You start to wonder if there are even any good women left. Fortunately, there are some ways that you can spot the differences between women who are emotionally immature and those who can help you have a relationship. So you see how there's like a lot more emotional resonance in the way I framed it versus the way you framed it. So like you really want to think of how to write impactful hooks and impactful intros. Another thing for you, because the actual writing itself is fine, but it's more of like the window dressing stuff that you need to work on. So like, what I would avoid, especially with subheadings, is like just saying things literally like, okay, she plays games with you. She allows her emotions to rule her life. She's incapable of taking responsibility. She's a byproduct of a broken society. So basically, what like anytime you kind of literally spell out what's going to be next in the subhead, like you give the reader an out, because they're like they know more or less what's going to come next. So then that gives them an excuse to click away. So for example, I tried some different headlines, some subheadings here, right? She shows this telltale sign that she's using you for attention. Well, I didn't tell you what the sign is. So if you want to know what the sign is, you have to read it. You hear this phrase come out of her mouth over and over. You don't know what the phrase is, so you want to find out. She makes you feel crazy when she does this. Well, what does she do that makes you go crazy? I want to know that. She uses this common cliche. And there's not much more than meets the eye. So that one kind of is like closer to saying literally what it is, but there's a little bit of a gap there. And then in general, like you just want to look at like you just want to avoid any places where things might be like seeming repetitive. So I found like one sentence here. Let's see. Like, she's incapable of admitting her mistakes. It's always someone else's fault. She plays the victim like she's getting paid for it. Well, those are like basically 3 different ways of saying she doesn't admit her mistakes. So like choose one and cut the other 2. So yeah, overall, like your writing is solid, but I think really finding those like emotional hook points, like in the intro, stir up emotion. Like the intro is the best place to cause controversy. Like, does it seem like women are programmed to drive you insane? Today's modern woman is almost incapable of having a healthy relationship, right? So like that's a bold negative statement that a lot of people would be pissed off to read. But people still fill your bank account whether or not they like your article, as long as they read it. So those are my 2 cents on this. Overall, great job.